Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the April 21st briefing of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. This is a briefing for the meeting on Thursday, April the 24th, 2025. And after we review the agenda and agenda items, we actually have two discussion items today. We have a medical insurance update and a fire study update. So without further ado, turn the meeting over to our county manager, Chantel Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioners, staff, and guests. The agenda items before you are for consideration for the April 24th meeting. Agenda item number 1 is a public hearing on the zoning petition of William Ernest Kramer III and Deborah S. Kramer from RS9 to GBS. This is storage services, retail external, and storage services, retail external. Internal, this is F1655. Our Planning Director, Chris Murphy, will brief this item.
Good afternoon. Thank you. This is a request of William Ernest Kramer III and Deborah S. Kramer to rezone 5.55 acres located on the northwest side of Everett Road, north of Evans Road, from RS9 to GBS for the uses storage services internal and storage services external. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map. The subject property is located within GMA 3. This is a subject property shown highlighted in yellow, again there on the northwest side of Everett, just across the street from a previous rezoning request for GBS for storage services external. Subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery. You will see that this is primarily a open piece of property that has previously been farmed. This is a subject property shown on the Southwest Suburban Area Plan update. It does recommend attached low-density residential housing, so think townhomes, 0 to 8 units per acre, and it is located just to the southwest of the West Clemensville Road, Everett Road Activity Center. This is looking northeast along Everett Road. The subject property is to the left. That's looking towards the activity center in the distance. This is looking southwest along Everett Road. Subject property is to the right. This is looking west into the subject property from Everett. And this is looking east across Everett Road. That is the GBS property that had previously been rezoned for storage services, retail external. No, nothing has ever been built. They did put some gravel down, put the driveways in, and put some buffering in, but the actual, as you can tell, the actual storage services use has never been commenced at that site. This is looking at the site plan, one connection along Everett, street yard and buffer yard, I believe 7 or 8 buildings of storage, stormwater management pond, circulation, etc. Looking at the request is not consistent with the low-density residential land use recommendation of the Southwest Suburban Area Plan update. The request could discourage new investment, reinvestment, and redevelopment of the nearby West Clemensville Road, Everett Road Activity Center. This request could lead to additional strip commercial development along this portion of Everett Road, which could have a detrimental effect on the roadway capacity. In looking at the project is well designed, and this particular project is not a high traffic generating use. This was heard by the Planning Board at their February 2025 public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition, and following the public hearing, the Planning Board did vote 7-1 to recommend approval. And with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
I just remember one question. In the materials, I was going to actually couldn't find the sentence yet, but it made some reference to checking with the school district over some property issue, and I was kind of curious what that is, because I don't think the school district owns any property in that area.
If you, where Flat Rock Elementary, is it Flat
is-
Rock
which is
Elementary and the
way
middle
south,
school,
which
there's
is
a
way south.
property across the road from
Right.
that at one point was set aside for a high school. I don't believe there's any identified need for a high school at this point, but that's the property that was referred, that I believe this is referring to, again, because you,
But it's probably, I bet it's a mile and a half, probably.
it's
north.
probably 3/4 of a mile to the south along.
Yeah, that's what I meant, to the south of that and to the north of the school property.
Correct.
Yeah, I didn't.
It was
There's a
more
ways.
looking at it from the standpoint of if this were to be approved here in conjunction with the GBS that's already been approved out there, are we signaling that there should be additional commercial development out there? And again, having the elementary and middle school already there, and if there were to be a future high school, there would be a lot of potential traffic congestion on a 2-lane road, I believe is why that was in the report.
I got it,
But
I got it. Yeah.
again, the planning board heard the staff recommendation and recommended approval to the commissioners.
Got it. Other questions?
How many 9,000 square foot lots under RS 29 could you fit on that 5.5 acre tract?
No, more than that. 4.8 times 5.5, whatever that comes out to be.
Close to 25.
24, 23, 24.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Generic question first. I don't see any summary attached here of the discussion before the planning board. So there was one vote in opposition, but I would be interested to see what the discussion was and what the rationale for the dissenter was.
It's been so long ago, I can't really remember. I can bring that information before Thursday.
Ken, is that information available to, I would hope that that information is available at the time of our second briefing and could be routinely included in our packet.
Well, normally our minutes basically reflect actions and general discussions. We generally don't include very many specifics. If they give a written statement as to why they voted a particular way, that would be included, but if we didn't receive that.
My recollection is that if there is a dissent, there is, as often as not, at least a one-sentence summary of what rationale was offered in the minutes.
We stopped doing that probably 6 or 8 years ago.
I've seen it more recently than that. Anyway, whatever notes, whatever minutes there are, I would like to see, please. But with regard to this particular property, we were having sort of offline conversation about the characteristics of the site, and as I recall, you were saying something about rocky substrata presenting difficulties in providing water and sewer service. Do I remember that correctly?
This is in an area that there is a lot of rock. There is and again, I can't remember which one of whether it's Vulcan or whether it's Martin Marietta, but there is just to the west of these properties. Some of this property over here, you notice it is recommended for industrial. It's already zoned, I believe, GIS for. And it doesn't show up on here because it doesn't go far enough. It might be a little bit further to the west. There is already a quarry that has previously been approved out there, but has not been actively mined. So yes, there is rock in this area.
In the area, has there been any evaluation of that particular site? I see
Not that I'm aware of.
I see a fairly large area there designated for residential use in the plan, and I don't know the history of running lines from the utility to that area, but I would be interested by that in the context of this. I mean, staff recommended denial, and so my working assumption is you've got a reasonable explanation for that. I've read your report up to the point where the planning board makes a decision and has its discussion. So if there is some structural reason why that in fact is not a suitable site for residential development because of problems providing, water and sewer service, I'd like to know that for future discussions.
And again, that's speculative, on my behalf. That's not anything from a planning perspective that we don't have anything where we go out and do any bore samples and that kind of thing to determine rock. Now, if someone is going out to actually do development, they will do that.
They'll do that.
It's more of an opinion that could potentially be an issue in this area. Basically, you have down where the elementary schools are, there's an area down there that's been sewered, where the elementary and middle school are, and it pumps back up to I can't remember if it pumps or whether gravity flows to the other sewer treatment plant. This area here would either have to gravity flow to Muddy Creek, or we'd have to get it back up to Griffith Road. Again, but there's not any sewer in this area that I'm aware of south of the shopping center.
All right, well, thank you.
Other questions? Okay.
Agenda item number 2 is Mr. Murphy's as well. It's a public hearing on the zoning petition of Francis Hammock, Ader Reed, and David Evan Ragland from RS20 to RS12S.
Good afternoon. Again, yes, this is a 29.62 acre tract located at the northern terminus of Martin Street and Avalee Street with a request to rezone from RS20 to RS12S. The request RS20 allows almost 2.2 units per acre, and the requested RS12 allows 3.63 units per acre. So that's the difference in the request under the existing zoning and the proposed zoning. From a total unit standpoint, the acreage of 29.62 would allow 64 lots, and they're requesting 93 lots as part of this request. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map. It is located within GMA 3, just north of the Walkertown limits, there in the quadrant between Old Hollow and 158 Reedsville Road. Subject property highlighted in yellow, again at the northern terminus of Avalee and Martin Streets, just to the north and northeast of the existing Walkertown boundaries. Subject property outlined in yellow. The subject property is primarily wooded. This is a subject property shown on the Walkertown Area Plan update. The recommended land use is single-family residential, 0 to 8 units per acre. This is looking north into the subject property from the northern terminus of Avalee Street. You can tell that this case started a while back when we're looking at snow. This is looking south from the subject property along Avalee Street. This is looking north into the subject property from the northern terminus of Martin Street. This is looking south from the subject property along Martin Street. And this is looking north onto Avalee Street from its intersection with Old Hollow Road. This is the site plan for F1656. Again, 93 lots, open space, some environmental open space, a grid network, again, connecting into Avalee and Martin. At this connection with Avalee, I believe you have in front of you a memo from Scott Snow dealing with, there is the Walkertown town limits. It encompasses half of Avalee Street and the other half is not within the town limits. And he has some concerns related to that. The project is shown for public streets. These are publicly dedicated streets, and thus should be publicly maintained streets. It's my understanding that the intention is to turn those streets over to NCDOT. Scott has an email saying that they are proposing that those streets be maintained by the homeowners association, but I have an email based on that conversation we had before the meeting. I have an email into the developer saying that's not permitted. These have to be publicly maintained streets. That's what you've indicated on your plan. I just want to make sure that you're aware of all the moving, swirling parts and pieces. Again, because I had not seen the letter in front of you until I got here as well. Again, this is just a little closer up of the site plan, showing how the lot layout will be, the internal configuration, the open space, both the active and the passive open space, stormwater management devices, stream buffers, et cetera. This is where the U5824 NCDOT project is. This is Martin Street. This is Avalee Street. You see it as a multi-lane facility going in both directions. Martin Street will have a median where you will not be able to traverse from North Martin Street to South Martin Street in one movement. You would have to do a U-turn, take another means, go out to Avalee, which is a full intersection. At my last briefing, Commissioner Martin, or Chairman Martin, you asked, and somehow, I don't think my revised one is in here, unless I pulled up the wrong one. I have maps that show the multi-lane section goes all the way back to Old Walkertown Road where the railroad crosses. So it's multiple lanes in both directions from Reedsville Road all the way back to Old Walkertown Road. Because that was part of the question that you asked last time, is what the cross section was heading west.
You want to talk about it now?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and finish this because, like I said, I thought I had a slide in there that had that. Perhaps I sent the wrong one over. The proposal is consistent with the recommendations of Legacy and the Walkertown Area Plan Update. The request provides a continuation of single-family development at appropriate densities where sewer is available. The proposed site design promotes livability through the inclusion of central open space and internal sidewalks. The street connections are to existing publicly maintained streets. This was heard by the Planning Board at the February 13th, 2025 public hearing. There was significant opposition, but they were organized and had 2 speakers. The opposition primarily had concerns related to traffic along Avalee and Martin Streets, access back out to Old Hollow Road, access questions into the subject property via Avalee, and the increase in density and size of the resultant lots. Following the public hearing, the Planning Board did vote 6-2 to recommend approval to the commissioners. And with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Can you go back to the picture that shows that we were talking about? I read in the remarks, the kind of DOT recommendations and the I guess the staff planning recommendations is that there be a right lane, I guess from 158 heading west, that there would actually be a turn lane right that would make it actually 3 lanes there until you got to Martin Street, and that would continue to Avalee, and then I think there's already does that sound correct? That recommendation on those, and then beyond that, looks like after Avalee, it merges pretty quickly back into the 2 lanes.
Yeah, there were some recommendations related to NCDOT's comments related to some turn lanes, both at Martin and Avalee. I don't know the specifics, but they are the conditions of approval that are in your
So
package.
they're in there as a condition, because
Correct.
the way I read it was that those were recommendations.
Now, those are in as conditions of approval.
Okay, those would have to be added. And then actually, I'm trying to think about, it's hard, I've been out there once, and with the road not in place and the clearing, it's hard to see all that, but I'm just trying to, because of the meeting, I'm trying to picture if somebody were coming in from the town of Walkertown heading east on Old Hollow Road, heading east from, say, the Walkertown Library, they come down, they're heading, sort of that way. I'm trying to, in order to turn to get into, there is an opportunity to turn at Avalee.
Correct.
So you could turn left there. You cannot turn left, obviously, at Martin Street, too close to the intersection, tied up, and you can do that. And there's no signal at Avalee. And is there a signal beyond at the next intersection? Is that a red?
I'm not sure if there's one at the next intersection. I know there is further to the west, but I'm not sure if it's the next full intersection or whether it is where, I'm not sure which the next full intersection is, but there is one at where the Hardee's and what used to be,
Yeah, I know where that is.
I can't think of the restaurant that was there on the corner, and the CVS or Walgreens, whichever it is, that I know there is a full intersection there with a stoplight, but I'm not sure if there's one in between that's allows full access.
So if someone in the morning, for example, were turning right out of Martin Street, they'd have to, obviously, have to go right. If they wanted to get to 158 and head south, they'd actually have to go up to Avalee, they'd have to cut across 2 lanes of traffic, get to Avalee, and then make a U-turn to go back the other direction.
If you look at, yes, you're right. If you look at this, it appears that it is set up for a U-turn because it
Yeah, I
has
see that
it has
extra
that bump
space.
out there. And again, I think at this point, it's not planned to be signalized. I don't know that it would meet the warrants, but I think, again, it's far enough away from 158 that if it met the warrants, it could be signalized in the future. I believe that's the way it's set up.
See. Can you talk a little bit about the streets, Avalon and Martin, as they are now in that subdivision, about 48, 49 homes? They're not Walkertown maintained.
They are Walkertown maintained.
Are Walkertown maintained.
Avalee and Martin Street are both maintained by the town of Walkertown. They are on their PAL bill maps, and they receive state funding for assistance and maintenance. So they are. The issue that the town manager has brought up is there is, in this section here, Avalee currently ends in this location here, if you see where my mouse is. And the town limit line, there's a portion of that technically is the middle of that right-of-way. So if you extend Avalee, you're going to have portion, half of the road is going to be in the town of Walkertown and the half isn't. He's like, we're not going to maintain half a road. I mean, again, I think one way or the other that could probably be worked out, but that's a discussion for another day. The biggest issue that he brought up to me was when he showed me the email where the developer with True Homes was saying, yeah, these are publicly dedicated, but the homeowner association is going to maintain them. Well, that's not an option here. I mean, these have to be publicly maintained. Obviously, there are triggers that whenever they get to a certain level of development, they're supposed to be working with NCDOT to turn those streets over to them. That's part of their platting process with us, that they provide the engineered documentation that they've been constructed to NCDOT standards, and then they're supposed to, again, work with NCDOT to turn those over. Again, things fall through the cracks. I don't know, but they shouldn't fall through the cracks intentionally. So again, I have an email into the developer saying, no, these must be publicly dedicated to NCDOT or the town of Walkertown if they were to decide to annex into the town. And again, that's their business, not mine. But I wanted, but existing Avalee and existing Martin, the town of Walkertown maintains those streets.
Yeah, I got the same memo that you did today and the same letter, but these maps actually are, because I said, I've seen this map before, and it is actually in the PowerPoint from the families who opposed. They actually include these items that are circled, and I guess there's a part of me, I mean, it certainly sounds to me like, I think what the city manager, Scott Snow, is saying, these discrepancies ought to be resolved, and he's got 4 pages where there are discrepancy issues, which I assume are all boundary line issues.
And again, I'm not a surveyor, I'm not an engineer. We have something that is sealed by an engineer that says X. If you look at the image I have in front of you right here, there was concern raised on behalf of the opposition at the public hearing before the planning board where they were showing the buffer yard. If you see 30-foot type 1 buffer yard, use existing trees when possible, existing unimproved right-of-way to be abandoned. They were showing that they were going to try to abandon the entire 60-foot right-of-way since it's never been opened. Well, an engineer or developer can say that's what we're going to try to do, but if it appears that that's not going to happen, then they would have to revise their plan. Well, based on conversations at that public hearing from the neighbor who lived adjacent to this, who said he would oppose closing this right of way, hearing the town manager say that he didn't think that the town would consider closing this right of way, we advised the engineer, Steve Causey, to go back and revise their plan not to account for that right of way to be abandoned. So that's why this plan now has the buffer yard shown on the subject property and the right-of-way remains there. So they shifted things, again, based on the feedback that they got, that it was unlikely that that portion of that right-of-way would be abandoned, so they went back and revised their plans. Again, the image that the town manager, Mr. Snow, presented, you've got one image that's a tax parcel viewer layer, and you've got one image that is the planning specific viewer. With the planning specific viewer, we have verified with our GIS staff that is the corporate limits. I don't know why the tax parcel viewer shows a slightly different city limits, town limits than does the planning viewer, but we've confirmed that the image, this image, in purple, the very last page, this is the corporate limit. And if you notice, you see along Avonlea, flip to this. You notice this is the section where, Mr. Snow, this is the portion of the existing Avonlea that is within the town limits. And this is the portion of the existing Avonlea that is outside the town limits. And that's where they have a concern about maintaining half of a street.
So as to his request, what does it take? I mean, you made a comment earlier about it being resolved later. And I guess my question is, and as he points out, we probably ought to resolve all this stuff before anything were to happen.
Well, and again, I think this gets back to a lot of varying conversations that have happened, when you hear your voice feeding back multiple times, ooh, that's scary. Okay, how about now? Okay. I think it gets back to some of the discussions that have been going on for several, for months related to this project. We have a driveway permit requirement for the town of Walkertown, since this is going to be tying onto the town of Walkertown streets. Again, I think there is obviously if the town doesn't issue a driveway permit, they're going to have problems. I think part of working through that driveway permit would be, all right, we need this section to be annexed into the town, this section of half of this Avonlea Street. And again, I think that's something that could be worked through at the driveway permit stage. I'm not trying to kick the can down the road. I just don't know what the solution is. It's kind of no man's land because it's already been offered for public dedication. It's just the way the lines lay out. Generally, you take you go to the center line of a road whenever you're doing annexation actions. Well, in this particular case, the half of the right-of-way is in that location, so you've got this little spike of, say, 30 or 40 feet that's kind of no man's land. So again, I think that has to be worked out over the course of time.
Okay, I hear you. I'll stop here. I'm sure there are other questions too.
Because I'm trying to make sense of how the various maps fit together. And have a little bit of challenge with that. There's no present connection shown at the back end of the existing neighborhood between Abilene and Martin. Am I reading that correctly?
There is no existing connection between Abilene and Martin. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Correct.
All right. The only connection is close to Old Hollow Road, and that's Annie Lane. It's basically a three-lot difference between Abilene and Martin at that point. Annie Lane.
I'm not sure where Annie Lane is.
Annie Lane is 2 lots back from Old Hollow Road
Okay. So you're-
on Abilene
we're way
Street.
back out there.
It's the cross.
Okay.
It's the cross street,
It's here.
the ladder rung street.
That's the only existing connection between the two.
Correct.
All right.
And there are 2 proposed. That's where I was confused because I thought we were in the development.
So within the development, there is a connection proposed at the back end of present Martin Street and way back a lot further from the present end of Martin Street. Is that correct?
There are 2 proposed connections.
Only one of which connects to the existing Abilene Street. Is that right? Then there's a proposed connection at the back end of the proposed development. Is that right?
Basically you have the existing Annie way back out at Old Hollow Road. The only connection beyond that between Abilene and Martin Street is in the new development, which is on the screen right now, and it would be this street and this street.
Yeah, that's okay. So if you drop down to the end of existing Abilene Street, that is not proposed by the
Correct.
new development to go through to Martin Street.
Correct.
And now, by coincidence, this is not an official Forsyth County meeting that I'm talking about, but I have, been doing a practice of having open public input meetings at different locations around the city and county. And by coincidence, Walkertown was next up on my list, and I held a meeting there that was very well attended last Thursday night. And a number of residents from the neighborhood were expressing concerns, one of which being the existing traffic pattern in the neighborhood is for folks who are coming down Martin Street to cut across to Abilene at Annie Street in order to get out far enough away from the intersection of Old Hollow and 158 that they didn't have to wait as long. But they still have to wait a long time to get out under current circumstances. So there is no proposal currently within the existing development or in NCDOT's current plans to signalize the Abilene Street intersection with Old Hollow.
Correct.
So any turn lane would be an out, basically an in and out right, with frankly, no benefit to either the new development or existing neighborhood in terms of being able to access Old Hollow Road going out to the left towards 158.
Correct.
They report that the current pattern, I just mentioned that. Do you have any information to the contrary in the record that the traffic down Martin is likely to continue to go out to the connection with Old Hollow? All right, well, they're,
And again, it gets back to, it's the same thing that we'll hear in a couple of weeks when I brief on Hastings Road. There is no requirement for a traffic impact analysis to be completed unless you hit a certain traffic threshold. And generally speaking, when you're looking at 94 lots, you're not going to hit that to actually do a TIA, which would have trips that look at trip distribution and all those kind of things. Again, that's not something that in this case was required because it doesn't meet the warrants.
yeah. But in this case, unlike a number of others, and including the one that you're bringing back to us at a later meeting, the only exits to a proposed new development are through the streets of an existing neighborhood with no improvements proposed to the existing streets.
Correct.
And the other thing that I wanted to ask about, you had given us an estimate of the width of Martin and Abilene, 21 feet, as I recall. Well, I received word from residents that they measured, and the widest spot they could find was 18 feet. And that under existing conditions, two wide vehicles can't really pass each other. There.
It's 20 feet. Right there is the width measurement. I believe that's on Abilene.
So you didn't ground verify this?
I have not ground verified, no.
All right.
But I can tell you, I live on a road that's 16 feet wide and 2 school buses can pass on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I live on a street that's probably going to paper out at, I have to go to the through street using strip streets that will paper out wider than they in fact are in practice along there. But at any rate, the other thing I wanted to ask you about today is the issue of whether or not a resident was objecting to a proposed abandonment of a right-of-way. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you, on this map, show us where that issue is found?
Can't zoom in really well, but it's this resident here,
And
which is that unopened right-of-way that but that we were asking about earlier about whether or not there was another cross street over to Martin.
right.
This is the right-of-way that's never been opened. This was, I believe, the neighbor that indicated that they would come out in opposition to closing that right-of-way.
And why is that relevant to the discussions here?
It's relevant based on the information that they presented that basically tried to say that the developer's information on his plan was wrong. Again, he was showing it as labeled 30-foot type 1 buffer, use existing trees when possible, existing unimproved right-of-way to be abandoned. So again, they were designing their plan under the assumption that that 60-foot right-of-way would be abandoned. They'd get 30 feet of it. The neighbor would get 30 feet of it. That's how they had designed their plan. That's why that buffer yard was shown within that right-of-way. That's why I brought it up.
So if the relevant landowner is prepared to come and tell us that they never received notice from the developer for anything of the sort, would that affect the proposal? I mean, basically saying
Notice
that
related to what? The abandonment?
the abandonment.
The abandonment would have come after approval. That generally, a lot of times you propose something and it says existing unimproved right-of-way to be abandoned. And then if you get the rezoning approved, then you go to the next step and say you want to bring through the abandonment. Well, whenever it was clear from the discussion with the town of Walkertown and that neighbor, it made it sound like it wasn't going to happen. We were like, you need to go back and revise your plan now. It doesn't sound like this is going to happen. But there are lots of things that are approved conditionally, both at the city council level and the county commissioner level, that are speculative based on a future action. And if that future action doesn't happen, then they have to revise their plan. And that may or may not involve coming back.
Is the site plan up for consideration based on either abandonment of that right-of-way or non-abandonment of the
What's before you today does not include the abandonment of the right-of-way.
Okay.
They have revised it to basically leave the 60-foot right-of-way there, and their buffer yard starts from the property that they own, fee simple.
I think that's all the questions that I've got today. But again, I also just saw this, so thank you.
You got some?
Yeah, my only concern was with regard to access, and they've covered most of those questions. And I think an increase of 900 trips per day would not trigger an NCDOT analysis, I think is what you told us.
3,000 trips is the NCDOT rate, and in our UDO, it's 150 trips in the peak hour.
Okay.
And it didn't trigger either one of those.
All right. And in the absence of a signal, as I understand it, there's no cure for a right turn out of Martin onto Old Hollow Road, heading away from 158 for the U-turn dilemma, aside from a traffic signal?
Correct. In other words, if you're leaving Martin and you need to go back to the east, you could either come out Martin, head east on Old Hollow, head west on Old Hollow and go to the intersection and make a unprotected U-turn, i.e. there's no traffic signal there. Or you could go internally within the development on either, if this were approved, one of the new streets or Annie, and come out of Avily and take a left over, crossing multiple lanes.
And I did see there were minutes of the City County Planning Board meeting in our packet for this one.
But there should have been, were there no minutes in that? Because again,
Yeah, the minutes are real short.
Okay.
I could go back, I mean, they're like
Yeah.
that. And it was right when it just says,
Nor-
and it lists the vote.
there was no one who spoke in opposition to the previous case, F-1655. It was basically, it was staff's recommendation for denial, planning board recommended approval with one dissenting vote, but if there wasn't a lot of discussion, it was just that, it was a vote. In this case, there was a lot of discourse. There was a great presentation that was given by the citizen. The city manager for Walkertown spoke, and then there was a lot of robust discussion. So again, that sometimes leads to discrepancy in the amount of minutes. But yes, there were minutes I know should have been in there for both cases.
Yeah, but it only swung one more vote against. Right?
Yeah.
Rest my case. Thank you.
Any questions for you, Commissioner Wood? Because I got two more.
Okay.
The two more I have is more about for example, on this one, the one with the yellow one.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. If you look at that subdivision over to where it's York Place, Abbott Lane, York Place Drive, all those, they're in the brown. It goes all the way up there to in this case, to the north, there's Gate Road that actually has an access that actually could actually go into this property. But it's hard to get to because you've got a big ravine that is on to the west of Avily, and you've got that lift station or whatever is back in there at the end of that little road. I think that's a little further back. That's a little arch. So this is actually between those two things. I think that lift station is a little purplish thing at the very top there, right above case 1656. See that little, yeah.
Right there.
I think that's a lift station.
Correct.
If you come down, you'll see the Gate Road on the subdivision that cuts across into there. And, I mean, that actually does provide access into the area. It's just, and that.
From a topographic standpoint, you have a large stream crossing you have
Yeah,
to
I saw the
make.
stream, and I saw that, looked at it. And I also looked at the one you're on right now, that just to go back to it. I was just thinking about, even if this were to come about, the future is, you know, there's going to be development on that parcel, you know, actually probably all the parcels that are yellow to the northwest, the north, and to the east. And it seems like if this were to happen, there ought at least be some recognition that you would have more, you know, stub roads available for future other tie-ons, because that would make a huge difference in the future. If you had some stub roads to get out a different way to 158, that would really change the traffic patterns there. And it seems like all of these subdivisions, in fact, they even show the slides that were presented by the opposition folks, show a bunch of those. It's way, way down here. A bunch of those pictures of all these subdivisions, and they're all self-contained streets. Gosh, it's way down. Wait. Things having to load. Hang on.
Whenever you were speaking like to the northwest, if you look on the aerial here, you know, there is an existing RM8S project of mixture, I believe, of single-family and townhomes. But unfortunately, even the existing RM8S that, you know, basically is shown on here is built out, and this that is under construction, which is,
Not
I
connected.
believe there are homes that are being constructed out there now. I'm not sure the date of this aerial, obviously lots of infrastructure, but those two developments don't tie into one another.
Exactly, and it seems like that ought to be something that planning, somebody that they're calling for, because that would change the whole future movement out in that area, because you already got two there, that one that shows the dirt up there, and then the one that already exists, no access, self-contained. If this were to come about, self-contained, and I'm trying to find the map.
Planning staff recommended that those two developments be connected, but there, you know, whenever Walkertown made the decision, there was a decision made not to connect them again. Being fair, there are streams in that area as well. So again, I'm not sure if it was a stream issue, if it was something else, but again, there were discussions from a planning standpoint on tying those two developments together. But whenever Walkertown ended up approving the more recent one, which is the one to the north there around the high school, it was done without making that connection back out to the other development that's been there 15 or so years.
Yeah, and I realize there are extra costs involved, but sometimes doesn't that have to sort of become the cost of doing business? And isn't that why we have planning and why we regulate stuff and why we do things? Is so that we're trying to make things better instead of worse from old 30 and 40-year-old neighborhood designs, and now we're adding all this other stuff and they're self-contained. It just strikes me as,
Well, I mean, again, the more interconnected you can be, the better off that you are. But again, it's also dealing with the real world situations where, again, if you look at this project, you've got streams here and topos. You've got streams to the east. So again, it severely limits your ability to make those connections, again, unless there's going to be some type of public participation, because every time you cross a stream, it's expensive. And a lot of times it's hard to bear that whenever you're trying to spread that over 80, 90 lots. Again, if you brought in a larger project, you might be able to spread it further. But again, that's not kind of the reality that we're living in right now either.
it's a reality that we're allowing a lot of subdivisions that happen that are going to, and the reality is going to be there's a lot of really difficult traffic, and which creates a problem. And yes, it would cost millions to actually do that, to build a bridge, to culvert it, to do whatever it takes to do it. But I even looked on this one, on the very map you're on right now, up on the sort of the northeast side, the topographical area actually smooths out some. Maybe it goes some off the map that I can't see, but looks like that one of those lots up there in the top would make a lot of sense to have a stub road maybe right across from that most northern branch to get to have, just to plan for some things in the future if this were to happen. I mean, I have a lot of concerns about kind of, and I realize those are huge. If you start adding things like that, development comes to screeching to a halt, and that's a problem. We need housing. I mean, there are all kinds of competing demands here. So part of the reality is we need housing, but that's another part. But it's just really, it's giving me a lot of heartburn. And then there's also a reference here about encroachment. That was the second thing. And encroachment is that apparently Walkertown has an ordinance about encroachments, which I assume with narrow streets, if you end up parking a bunch of cars in the streets, you're encroaching into the streets and right-of-ways and so forth. And maybe, I don't know exactly what their ordinance says.
Well, they have a provision where they can provide for a strip at the end of developments that essentially precludes extensions without coming back to the town of Walkertown. But again, this project was built in the 60s, so that strip doesn't exist. On the plat that was recorded, there is no, and again, I'm making an assumption that that's what that's referring to because I'm not looking exactly at what you're looking at. Is it in the staff report or was it in their materials that were included in the packet that came from the opposition?
Yeah, I'll read you that one statement, then I'm done. It just says, the site plan is absent any indication of allowance for the well-documented Walkertown Road encroachment ordinance. I don't know exactly what it says, but.
That's what I'm referring to. And again, that's not applicable because again, the subject subdivision that's being tied into was platted in the 60s. So again, it's my understanding from the town of Walkertown ordinance that, that they've adopted, that they have this reservation that's at the end that basically stops it short of the property line. So the next person who's looking to do development has to specifically come to them. But that's not the case here because again, this was platted in the 60s. So that reservation doesn't exist. The one thing I was going to say a second ago is again, keep in mind, you've got a base number of units that's allowed by right. And as we're sitting here today, they can do 64 lots in the RS-20. They're asking for RS-12, which allows up to 107, but they're proposing 93. So really, we're talking about a difference in 29 lots based on the request. And, sometimes I know, all these questions are good. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces, but we're really talking about the difference in 29 lots, exactly. not 93. So.
I do understand that. All right, I'm sorry, any other questions? We spent a lot of time on that.
Just one clarifying point. The map here that's on the screen now, does that show the entirety of the land that would be affected by the rezoning in this case?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 3 is Mr. Murphy's as well. It's a public hearing on the zoning petition of Front Street Wahlberg LLC from AG and GIS to LIS and SIDA.
Yes, this is a request to rezone 30.35 acres located on the east side of Wahlberg Road between Union Cross Road and Business Park Drive from GIS and AG to LIS and CEDA, or a Special Intense Development Allocation. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map. It is located within GMA 4, Future Growth Area. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, part of it is existing GIS for the use rec services outdoor. That was a driving range. This also a portion that's AG. You saw this request several months ago where they were requesting LIS and I believe GBS for an industrial building and for a convenience store with truck fuel cells. Subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial imagery, again, significantly wooded. There was a driving range there, but it's slowly being taken over by nature, back over by nature as it's been closed for a number of years. This is a subject property shown on the Southeast Forsyth County Area Plan update. It does recognize the existing commercial recreation for the driving range and has a recommendation of large lot residential, but if you notice the blue outline around this boundary area, it has a special land use recommendation that says when public utilities are available, i.e. public sewer, that area is appropriate for industrial development. This is looking east from Business Park Drive. The subject property is across Wahlberg Road from this image. This is looking north along Wahlberg Road. The subject property is to the right. Union Cross Park, affectionately known as the radar base, is across the street from this. You see the zoning sign. This is looking south along Wahlberg Road. The subject property is to the left. Again, you see part of Union Cross Park there on the other side of the street. This is looking north into the intersection of Wahlberg Road at Hayes Drive. This is the east-west road where there is the Wahlberg Road, Union Cross Road, and Hayes Drive all come together. This was, again, where the convenient store with truck fuel cells was proposed prior to their withdrawing that request. This is looking east, again, along Hayes Drive. The subject property is to the right. This is the site plan. It does call for one 420,000 square foot building with associated truck bays, parking areas, stormwater management pond, and the stream buffers that are required. If you recall from my last briefing, there was an alternative site plan, but they did choose to go with the one large 420,000 square foot building. So that is the site plan that they have chosen to go forward with. So that is what is before you. This is looking at the CETA criteria. Again, I'm not going to read through all of that, but this project would meet the criteria for awarding a special intense development allocation, and that is when you need to have additional impervious surface within a watershed area for targeted development for jobs, economic development, et cetera. In summary, this request is consistent with the recommendations of both Legacy 2030 and the Southeast Forsyth County Area Plan Update. The request will have excellent transportation access to I-74, and it's also very close to I-40, just a couple miles away. The project will provide approximately $35 million of investment and would create 250 estimated jobs within the community. This was heard by the Planning Board at their March public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition, and following the public hearing, the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4 is a public hearing by the Board of Commissioners for Forsyth County regarding tax-exempt bonds for healthcare facilities to be issued by the National Finance Authority for the benefit of Novant Health, Inc., and an associated resolution approving in principle the issuance of not to exceed $855 million of healthcare facility revenue and revenue refunding bonds for the benefit of Novant Health. Charles Boyer from Novant Health is online to brief this item.
Good evening, Commissioner. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'm actually in Brunswick County. Well, I'm in New Hanover County, heading to Brunswick County for another TEFRA hearing this evening. Just to be clear, I'm Charles Boyer. I represent Novant and the National Finance Authority. We're Robinson, Bradshaw, and Henson. We're bond counsel on this transaction. We came before you at your last meeting and presented a slideshow and kind of the high-level overview of it. I'll repeat here. The request is the National Finance Authority and Novant are requesting the County Board of Commissioners hold a public hearing, approve the issuance of the tax-exempt bonds for the benefit of Novant and its affiliates for the purposes of Section 147F, that's the federal code, and the applicable law governing the National Finance Authority. The reason we're in front of the county is because some of the facilities that will receive the benefit of these funds are in the county's jurisdiction. We are going to 9 other jurisdictions, counties, and cities across North Carolina and South Carolina in this transaction for TEFRA hearings as well for the same reason. And then kind of the punchline for these TEFRA procedural tax approvals is the bonds will not constitute a debt of the county, nor will the county have any obligation to repay the debt. The county, like I said, is involved for the tax approval under 147F. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Bauer? Boyer, excuse me. All righty, thank you very much.
Agenda item number 5 is a public hearing to consider the expenditure of county general funds for an economic development project and authorizing an agreement with Project Beaver. Kirby Robinson, our Community Economic Development Director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. Appreciate the opportunity to bring these items before you today. Items 5 and 6 are both public hearings to consider the use of county economic development funds to aid and encourage a business to locate or expand in the county. And of course, we're at the point in the process where we're still using project names. So we have Project Beaver and then Project Renaissance, which we'll of course brief in more specificity at Thursday's meeting, and we'll use the company name. Just a quick overview, and if it's all right with the manager, I'll just jump into both of them. In terms of Project Renaissance, which I believe is item 6, the company is proposing a $15 million capital investment in the county over a 5-year period. That capital investment will result in 42 new jobs, which will have an average annual wage of $63,000. For Project Beaver, that company is proposing a $31 million capital investment over a 5-year period, result in 28 new jobs with an average annual wage of $47,000. So if the capital investment condition and job creation condition requirements of the grant agreement are met, the 5-year total not to exceed incentive package Project Renaissance would be $143,165. Over 10 years, that's expected to generate $508,000 of new county taxes, of which the county would retain an estimated 72%. For Project Beaver, if those conditions were met, the total 5-year not to exceed package would be $291,183, which would generate $1,392,000 of new taxes over 10 years, of which county's estimated to retain 79%. And of course, in each case, each annual payment to the company would not exceed 50% of the new county property taxes generated by the company's capital investment. There is competition for both packages for Project Renaissance, competition in Virginia and Texas, and for Project Beaver, competition in Ohio. Both companies are seeking city incentive package and state grants as well. Happy to answer any questions the board has.
Any questions for Kirby?
Thank you.
Agenda items 7 and 8 are special resolutions. 7 is a resolution recognizing May as Historic Preservation Month, and 8 is a resolution recognizing April as Public Health Month. We'll have staff to receive both resolutions here on Thursday. 9 is approval of minutes for the meeting of April 10th, and I believe those have been emailed out. Agenda item number 10 is an amendment to the fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to appropriate and partially refund fund reimbursement from Grass America, Inc., as well as the pass-through of the refund to the North Carolina Department of Commerce. I have Casey Balzer to brief this item, but Kirby Robinson is going to brief this item. Thank you, Kirby.
Okay. Good afternoon again. This is an item where we're basically working to close out some state grants. And part of the building reuse grant process is, a company has to make a certain amount of capital investment, and they have to meet a certain jobs criteria. So when we were going to close out the Grass America grant, it's an unfortunate circumstance that sometimes a company does not meet their jobs requirement. And that's for whatever reason, events happen in the market, other competition, business needs shift. So in this case, in the case of Grass America, we actually had to claw back some of the state money that passed through the county. When we did that, we calculated their jobs a little bit differently than Commerce did. So it added another layer to the process. So essentially what this item does is take that money so we can pay Commerce their money back, but also send a partial refund back to Grass America as well. So it'll settle everything there and net out. Happy to answer any questions the board has.
Questions for Kirby? Thank you.
All right, Kirby, I'm hoping you're going to do number 11 as well. And it's a resolution authorizing an amendment to the agreement with North Carolina Department of Commerce for a building reuse grant to support the expansion of Frank L. Bloom Construction Company's commercial general contracting headquarters in Forsyth County.
Thank you, ma'am. This is good news. So Frank Bloom had a building reuse grant as well. County took the state money, made a partial payment. I believe in 2019, it was a $250,000 grant. When we were relooking at that, we said, well, gosh, we didn't make the full payment. What happened? We reached out to the company. They had actually completed their part. We just needed to catch up with them on it. So this takes the money that was appropriated in a previous fiscal year, appropriates the balance, and so we can make that final payment and then settle up with Commerce. That good news in that front.
Questions for Kirby? Thank you.
Agenda item number 12 is an amendment to the 2018 Smith Reynolds Airport CPO to transfer funds from the landfill redevelopment project to the tower rehab project. Kimberly Bussey, our Deputy Budget Director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item is necessary to move $165,700 from one airport project to another for the tower rehabilitation project. This amount will cover the cost of the design contract with Avcon. The design phase must be completed before the grant for construction, which is in the amount of $2 million, can be officially issued to the county. So this $165,000 will act as a bridge to get that taken care of. The airport does intend to apply for reimbursement for this amount, as well as they'll be able, again, to get the $2 million for the construction phase. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this item.
Questions for Kimberly?
Okay. Agenda item number 13 is Ms. Bussey's as well. It's a resolution approving a third revision to the fiscal year 25 JCPC funding plan.
This item is necessary because the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council has undergone their third quarter accounting review. Two programs that are currently receiving funds from the Juvenile Crime Prevention County have indicated that they will be unable to fulfill their or to expend the funds fully, and they're reverting some back to the county to be reallocated to other programs. Insight Human Services will revert $15,000. And the YWCA Work and Earn It program is reverting a little over $2,800. The programs that will be receiving these reverted funds are the Parenting Path Knockout program for $515, Parent and Teen Solutions program for $515, Triad Restorative Justice Impact Circles and Restart program for $13,700, and Authoring Action Just Us for $3,100. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this item.
Questions? I don't have a question, but I do have one comment. I'm glad to see that we're kind of staying on top of all those grants, so we're not surprised at the end and have to revert money. So we're able to actually, I guess quarterly, basically, make adjustments.
Right.
That will end up hopefully getting all of these dollars as best as possible spent.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
Agenda item number 14 is a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement with BW&A Books, Inc. for the publication of the Forsyth County Architectural History Manuscript. Ashley Penley from our Community Economic Development Department will brief this item.
Good afternoon. I'm actually not going to take up too much of your time because we have the subject matter expert here, Michelle McCullough, Historic Resources Officer with the Planning and Development Services. She's going to give you the latest and greatest update with the ever-anticipated Forsyth County manuscript. So I will turn it over to Michelle.
Chair Martin, Commission members, thank you for allowing me to come here this evening and this afternoon, I guess, and speak with you. So it's been a long time coming. I don't know if some of you have been sitting here that I have come for the last 6 to 7 years about this project. As a certified local government community, the county is required to keep up their architectural survey. We started that project in 2018, which took around 3 years to accomplish. At the beginning of that project, we came together with our other small municipalities. They signed an interlocal agreement to be part of this project, and in that they agreed to pay financially and to support it through its fruition. So we finished the survey, which just updates our database. It lets us know what we have out there, so that when we have these great zoning cases, we can make comments if we have any historic structures or know anything about that out there. For the last 2 years, we have been working on the manuscript for the publication phase of this. So at the end of May, we will be finished with the manuscript and we will move into the publication phase. This contract that's before you is a not to exceed $65,000 with BW&A, which is the firm that we utilized when we did the city publication. This book will be a companion piece to that. These publishers are very hard to find that do these kind of publications and that can work with the printers to get these printed. They know what we want to do. They have the setup already ready. They're ready to work with us. I do have to brag a little bit on the commission that when we started this project, we estimated it to be around $250,000, including 31% of certified local government grants, which we received. And we are staying within that budget, even the foreseeable future printing budget. So again, this proposal in front of you is just to have the printing ready document at the end. and then we will go and get bids out for publication, for the actual printing of it. We can't get those bids prior to 30 days before that. And again, with the world as it is, I'm hoping to stay within that budget that we so greatly anticipated. But if you have any questions, I can give you any updates. I will tell you that the other communities, the county's portion is 50% of this project. In the small communities, it's 50%. They have already paid in for this proposal, for this thing. So I just need your approval so we can move forward.
Good. Any questions?
Did you, are you the one that made or approved the budget?
I did. Well, the commission did.
And
We put it together with the State Historic Preservation Office, the publisher that we were going to use, and all parties, our consultant.
and has the county attorney reviewed the agreement that's proposed?
He has.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 15 is a resolution authorizing execution of a lease agreement with Gassy Tees LLC, doing business as Soft Golf, for lease of county-owned property located in Tanglewood Park. Constantine Stamati from our Parks and Rec Department will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the chance to brief on this agenda item. This item represents a resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement with Gassy Tees LLC, operating as Soft Golf. It concerns the leasing of approximately 6.6 acres of county-owned land situated at 4061 Clements Road within Tanglewood Park, or more specifically, it's an area right across from the dog park in Tanglewood we have. In the spirit of active and vibrant living and promoting recreational activities, we advertised a request for proposal via City County Purchasing, which resulted in receiving a single proposal from Gassy Tees, which intends to use the land for soft golf play. As some of you may know, soft golf is a full swing golf game using oversized equipment, making it fun and user-friendly for people of all ages, skill levels, and abilities. A few key components of this agreement include the county will receive a monthly lease payment of $750. Additionally, the county will receive 15% of any gross sales over $60,000 occurred by the tenant each year. The lease has an initial term of 3 years, with the county holding the option to renew annually for 2 additional years, allowing for a maximum of 5 total years. To align with market and economic changes, the agreement specifies that the annual rent shall adjust in accordance with fluctuations in the consumer price index from the preceding lease year. The property in question is not needed for any other county purposes during the term, and the 30-day notice typically required for such leases has been published accordingly. We believe that this arrangement supports local business initiatives related to recreational activities, enhances our departmental mission, and improves our park visitors' experience. And with this, I'll be happy to try to address any questions you may have about this potential partnership with Gassy Tees.
Any questions? Constantine?
I'm having a hard time visualizing where this is without a map.
Yeah, there is a map attached to the contract, and I have one printed, but it's in black and white, so I'll try to see if I can. Yeah, it doesn't look very good. Right, so this is the dog park, like I mentioned, right here. This is the parking lot, and the area is right there.
Okay. What are they going to need to do in terms of site preparation? Is there clearing? Is there grading?
There's nothing to be done on our end. They are essentially going to use the space as it is.
They've been there before.
Okay.
I mean, they've been there for the last 3 years, I guess.
Right, since 2021.
You can actually see it from Harper Road, runs into 158, and you turn right, go
Correct.
right to the left.
Yeah,
You
I
see-
mean,
you can see that big field, and they have a little building that they have their equipment out. and do this.
Then the question, if they've already been doing it basically at that site as it is, then it's not a relevant question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So soft golf has been in operation for 5 years.
Correct. I believe the first agreement we had with them since 2021. And they've been operating and the contract expired. And we had some interest from other groups about cricket play. And we saw it as an opportunity to kind of survey the market. And that's why we issued the proposal, the RFP.
And the soft golf club is made of what material?
Club, I think it's wood with the ball kind of
Not a softball, it's about this big.
bigger and from,
And they're kind of a plastic.
I think it's some exclusive, some patent that the gentleman is having.
Yeah, I don't
So
wanna-
it's a
I
unique,
can tell you
it's a
talking about
unique, indeed, a unique recreational activity.
I played it before. It's kind of interesting.
And
And I'm
I'll-
not a golfer, so a non-golfer can play it.
And alcohol is served at the premises.
No, currently, but the tenant can, if he's securing a license with everything that comes with it. He expressed the interest in the past, but he had some limitations, I believe, with,
Is consumption limited to,
to this specific area, I think.
Yes.
There's language in the, Correct.
can one consume in the designated area before going out to play with a wooden club?
it depends. It depends on the choice, I guess.
Did the county attorney have an opportunity to review the proposed lease?
I have, and just to clarify, they've been there since 2019, and I don't think anyone's been killed yet, so I think they're doing okay.
I don't think they served alcohol.
No, that was my question. They didn't have booze then, did they?
Constantine could probably answer that.
Again, they expressed the interest.
I mean, they'd like to, but they haven't been served.
They haven't,
alcohol.
correct. They haven't.
And that's why the liquor liability coverage was included in the current lease.
They would have to have their own license to serve alcohol.
That's correct, and that's where, from what I heard, because the gentleman was expressing the interest, and he had some limitations with securing the license. And
Have there been any injuries since the initial lease on the premises? Anyone hurt since the original lease was executed?
No, not that we are aware of.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Agenda items 16 and 17 are refunds by the tax assessor collector. 16 is in the amount of $19,903.35, and 17 is in the amount of $24,323.18, both from the North Carolina Vehicle Tax System. And then 18 is our March financial report. And that's all of our items, except we do have 2 discussion items, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you wanted to take a break first
Any
or...
desire for a break? We could move it. Since we do have a lot of our fire chiefs and fire marshal's office folks, maybe we do the fire study first.
That's fine. We'll go ahead and do our fire study. Deputy County Manager Kyle Haney will lead this discussion.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As the board will recall, when the Commissioners voted and passed the FY 2024-2025 budget, one of the board-directed initiatives was for staff to conduct a fire study to determine the adequacy of the fire tax and service districts to create a more equitable level of fire and rescue service across our fire system. I transitioned into this role in August and learned a lot about fire. I knew very little beforehand, but have learned a lot since. And so before we get into this, I did want to provide some background just to make sure everyone's working from the same general knowledge. But I want to just recognize how willing the fire chiefs have been to meet with me, to show me their stations and to educate me about the system. I know I let them all know that we would be giving a presentation today, so I know many are watching online, and certainly have some in the back who I'll recognize in a few minutes here as well. But did want to start off with some background, then discuss some of the findings from the study work group, and then end with some recommendations from staff. All right, so Forsyth County fire background. So just starting really with the most basic level, what does the fire department do? So fire departments are part of an emergency response system, as 911, EMS, all of our first responders are. And as their name would indicate, they provide fire, rescue, and emergency response. I say this, and not to be rudimentary, but fire departments are tasked with doing a lot more in our emergency response system than just responding to fire. And I want to make sure all the public knows that. So certainly they do respond to fires, fire alarms. They also respond to hazardous conditions with no fire. So I know there was a gas leak after a wreck previous week. The fire departments go out and deal with those situations. Overpressure rupture, explosions, overheating with no fire, and then rescue and emergency medical service calls, severe weather, natural disasters, and many other types of events. And while fire suppression and prevention is their primary function, the majority of calls are related to medical incidents. So that's the majority of calls that they're going on. And often they're the first responder on the scene, as they are generally in proximity to the events, more closer to the events than anyone else. Looks like some formatting issues happened with this, so I'm going to just try to go through that. Forsyth County provides funds to, Forsyth County's fire system, we provide funding to 16 different fire departments that serve the areas outside of the city of Winston and the town of Kernersville. This consists of 14 nonprofit fire departments and 2 municipal departments. And so you can see maybe a list of those nonprofit fire departments on here, as well as the 2 municipal departments, which are the City of King and the Town of Rural Hall. And we contract with them to provide services outside of the city limits of Winston-Salem and Kernersville. All right. So each department is contracted to provide fire suppression to the tax and insurance jurisdictions. So the board has created insurance jurisdictions, and the community has fire tax district jurisdictions, and we are contracting with these different fire departments to serve those areas and provide that service. In some cases, they also serve other jurisdictions as well as the area the county is contracted for. So, for instance, several have tax districts that extend outside of Forsyth County. So they have taxing areas that they serve in Guilford County and Davidson County, and so they're getting revenue both from the tax districts within Forsyth County, but also those other areas as well. And then the municipal departments of City of King and Town of Rural Hall, those departments serve within their municipal jurisdictions. That's their primary focus. But we also contract with them to serve rural areas outside of their municipal boundaries. And then likewise, the Town of Walkertown is actually not in a fire tax district. And so they contract separately with the Walkertown Fire Department, which is a nonprofit. And I'll just mention that is one of the things that I learned pretty early on. You have Walkertown and Clemens and Louisville fire departments, which are not municipal departments. Those are volunteer fire departments. They just have the same name as those towns. So the town of Walkertown separately contracts with the Walkertown Fire Department to provide fire service in their municipal limits. The departments also provide mutual and automatic aid to areas outside of their district. So when a call comes into one district and they either need additional manpower or additional support, our surrounding districts will go in and they will serve those communities as well. Or if there's not personnel available in that community, they will go in for mutual aid, automatic aid to help respond to that call. And here's a map of the fire tax districts we have. You'll note that there are actually 25 separate fire tax and service tax districts. We only contract with 16 different departments because some actually are representing multiple tax jurisdictions, multiple tax districts. All right, so just diving a little bit into the differences between municipal fire departments and nonprofit fire departments. So municipal fire departments are operated by a local government. So, we mentioned that we contract with the City of King and the Town of Rural Hall. Also, the City of Winston-Salem has a fire department. The Town of Kernersville has a fire department. High Point has a fire department, and they are serving within their municipal boundaries. Those operations are paid with the taxes from their residents, support those departments. They have primarily career staff, so mostly paid staff, although some may have a few volunteers, but it's primarily career staff. They serve within that municipal jurisdiction, but they may also serve beyond that jurisdiction, such as when we've contracted with the City of King and the Town of Earl Hall, they're serving outside those districts as well. They provide suppression, prevention, and inspection services. So the other type of department, the nonprofit fire departments, they are operated as an independent nonprofit organization. So their staff is overseen by a board of directors. They're an independent organization, and they have their own board of directors. They contract with local governments to serve jurisdictions, and in return, the local governments are providing taxpayer funds to let them operate. They have traditionally been viewed as volunteer fire departments, so I don't think nonprofit fire department is something that most people hear very much. It's mostly volunteer fire departments. I just mentioned that to say most departments now are at least a combination department with some paid staff and volunteers. And so all Forsyth County nonprofit fire departments are actually combination departments. They are at least paying some personnel, whether that's part-time or full-time. And the departments generally provide only fire suppression services as well as some education around prevention. And then lastly, the county has its own fire division within our emergency services department. So that's the last piece of this, the fire system here. The fire division provides fire prevention and investigation within the county and with municipalities that contract for that service through our fire marshal. The county also provides supplemental suppression services through our 09 program. So we have 3 trucks, 109, 209, and 309. They're not fire engines, they are rescue trucks that are deployed throughout the county, and their mission with county firefighters on them, our staff, to go and support our contracted fire department agencies. So if there's a call that comes in and they need additional manpower, they are going around and supporting those fire departments. So, and how do we fund our fire system? The county has traditionally funded the contract fire departments based on fire tax and service districts. So that map that we showed a little bit earlier with the 25 different districts, the commissioners set a tax rate for each of those districts and provide those funds to the contracted fire department. One thing to note here is that the fire tax district's tax rate cannot exceed 15 cents, so there is a cap on those fire tax districts. And the county has funded the operations within the fire division from our county from a fire overlay tax district that was created back in 2019 that includes all the areas covered by the fire tax districts. And so the premise behind this is that that department is serving all of the area, so we would tax the entire area for those services. I know there's a lot of information on this. This is actually, I'll just admit that I took this from a previous Deputy County Manager's presentation to you last July. This is the fire tax districts and the revenue, where we'll dive into that in just a minute, but you can just see all of the different amounts and different tax rates for all the different districts. And then, once again, this is the overlay district that we use to fund our county services. So the funding structures provide very different funding amounts to departments based on the assessed value of the property in each district. So essentially, the number of structures, the growth, the development in that community is going to drive how much funding is available through those fire tax districts. And has created a disparity in the level of funding each department receives. And I really apologize about the formatting here, but essentially what this was getting at, this is one of former Deputy County Manager Damon Senator Pratt's slides. The top 3 are funded at $2.7 million, $2.1 million, and almost $1 million. And the bottom 3 in our funding in revenue have about $110,000, $115,000, and $316,000. Meanwhile, you have very different tax rates here. So Salem Chapel, who was in the next to last in amount of revenue, has a 14-cent tax rate. They're almost at 15. Whereas Clemens, who has the most revenue, has an 8-cent tax rate. And you can see another example of that. So 8-cent tax rate in Clemens provides $2.7 million in revenue, while 12-cent tax rate in Mineral Springs provides a little bit south of $300,000. The issue with that is that there are costs to run a fire department. So Deputy County Manager Damon Pratt put this together last year as well, showed it to you. For firefighting apparatus, trucks, somewhere between $750,000 to $1.2 million for a truck, which is necessary to actually provide fire suppression. Station replacement, this is based off of a new station that Rural Hall is building with $6.2 million. Obviously, these existing facilities have repairs that are needed. Turnout gear is about $5,000 or $6,000 per set. Radios, $5,000. And then the last thing on here would have been personnel, and so the cost of having full-time or part-time staff. So even though there are limitations in the amount of revenue the tax districts can bring in, there's still significant cost to being able to operate. So I'll pivot now into the study group findings here. So after the board approved this initiative, staff got together and put a group together, and I just want to recognize, because a lot of those members of the commission of the study group are here. So our chairman, Chairman Martin, and Commissioner Linville represented the county commissioners, and we had 4 fire chiefs that were selected by the association. Chief Carl Walker from Piney Grove, who's here, Chief Walt B. Roth from Vienna, who's here, and Chief Gary Stiers from Clemens, who's here, as well as Chief Eddie Bottoms, who is not able to be here, but he's the chief in Walkertown. So those 4 chiefs were part of this commission, or this group, and then I served on it as well as our emergency service staff. So Brock Smith, our deputy chief of emergency services, who's over fire, as well as JB Ford, who was our deputy chief over 911, who's not here. So we had several meetings starting in September, have gone through January, and really to discuss the status of the Forsyth County fire system. We were able to pull in a lot of data that our staff was able to get from our systems to show the group, and then really just have some frank conversations about the status of how delivery of services is going. We also were able to bring in a peer county, Johnston County, who had recently gone through a transition in their funding model to come and talk to us a little bit about their experience. And staff has also reached out to Wake County, who's done a similar thing. So, we want to go through what the findings of this group are. Kind of first, and probably the main finding here is that the basic coverage is not being met in some areas of the county. So primary departments that are assigned to respond are either not able to respond or having delayed responses within those tax jurisdictions. There's a lot of different reasons that are going into that, but what we know is that our system has become more and more reliant on automatic and mutual aid. So departments going across their district lines to come and support. So we are starting to operate like a system. You know, in the city of Winston-Salem, you have a number of different stations, and they are moving around constantly, and that's kind of how our fire system in the county is also operating. So we're moving more like a system. And when one department's staff and apparatus moves out of that district, that's putting a strain on their ability to respond in that district. So they may have a call in that district with their truck and their personnel outside that district. This creates a tax equity issue of taxpayers from one district paying for coverage of another district. And so the largest issue that's causing this is really the availability of personnel. We have been a volunteer system and are very proud of our volunteers. However, we have seen a significant decrease in volunteers participation system-wide over the last 10 years, which is mirrored in many other communities as well. Going through the rosters, and Deputy Chief Brock Smith met with every single chief and went through those rosters. You can see that we're down from over 1,000 volunteers to 285 total volunteers operating in the system now, and of those, only 136 are certified interior firefighters. So the other volunteers can go to the scene, but they cannot go inside and fight fire. And the volunteers are really running approximately 7% of all emergency calls. So a system that's built on really having those volunteers as your firefighters, we are lacking personnel, which is causing some of this strain. So we also saw in the data that coverage and response times are better in areas with paid staffing models. So where you have part-time or full-time staff who are at the station 24/7, you're getting a truck out of the station and on the road sooner. The current funding structure does not provide sufficient budgets for all departments to staff full-time with paid employees. So they're not providing 24/7 coverage year-round. And we know that because one department only staffs from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. They have fewer calls than other departments, but that is what their ability is to staff. Other departments staff with only one personnel, which can cause safety and availability issues. So if that person's going out, we've had situations where one person's going out and you get to the scene and, you know, there may be some someone pulls a gun or just a situation they want to be in. So trying to have more than one personnel going out at a time is helpful. And then obviously if that person is the only one staffing and they're out, another call comes in, they can't respond. A second finding that we had really was that policies and procedures vary across the system. So obviously a system that's operated with 16 different departments with their own jurisdictions has led to 16 different ways to operate. This can cause confusion and competition with the system. So, one situation is that every department is determining their definition of what a qualified firefighter is. So, but when we're bringing multiple departments onto the same scene to operate together at this point, that can create confusion about what the capabilities and skill sets are of the other individuals. So having no uniformity there has been an issue. Different standard protocols, such as use of personal vehicles to arrive on scene, and then specifically different pay plans throughout all of our different departments is causing competition between our own departments. So if one department has to or decides to go up and pay a higher part-time rate, it really puts the pressure on the other departments to be able to continue to staff. The third finding was that there are areas for efficiency if we're operating as a system. So for instance, each department is doing its own purchasing. You may be buying 10 radios from one department, another department's buying 12. If we were operating as a system and buying those together, we would see better pricing. And then from assessing our capital needs as well, if we were operating as a system and looking at what our facilities, equipment, and apparatus needs are from a system perspective, it can help us prioritize expenditures and level that out annually. It can also help us determine what's needed from apparatus equipment for the system instead of every department needing their own pieces of equipment. We could say, okay, well, this area, this part of the county has this many trucks and go from there. The fourth finding here was that funding process with municipalities and multi-county departments can lead to uncertainty for departments. So we covered that a little bit earlier as far as, some departments are getting funded from different jurisdictions, and the process of determining how much each of those jurisdictions are going to put in really puts that department in a hard place from a budgeting perspective, but it can also cause tension between the counties and the other municipalities as well. And it can cause tax inequity if one side is funding those operations more than others. So those were the findings and wanted to lead that into our staff recommendations here. Based off that, I think overall what we've seen is that we are now operating more like a system. Previously, when we had a lot more volunteers, departments were able to handle their own districts and didn't rely as much on auto aid and mutual aid, but right now we are operating as a system. And so these recommendations are really getting at a multi-year, so these recommendations are not something we're going to do overnight, but multi-year strategy of setting the rules and setting the expectations of a system approach to this. So recommendation number one is operate and fund fire services as a system instead of separate tax jurisdictions. And so essentially fund a basic level of service throughout the system that ensures 24/7 coverage and use the fire overlay district to fund this level of service and the fire tax districts to fund jurisdictional needs above that level. So we're going to set a minimum standard of what our expected services throughout the system, fund that from the overlay, and then where there are needs above that, we would use our fire tax districts. Overlay funding to include that minimum level of staffing, as well as operating costs that are shared across departments. So some of that, buying the same piece of equipment from different departments, we could bring that in-house. We could also pay for hose testing. These requirements that every department has to operate could be funded out of the overlay as well. And then departments requested budgets to meet needs, not based on a tax rate. What the board has seen in previous years is really kind of a department saying we need 2 cents more on the tax rate. What we told the departments this year was we'd like to see a needs-based budget. We'd like to see what you need to operate. Let us figure out the tax rate piece of that. That is the board's prerogative. It really is just looking at what do you need to provide the service to your community. And then that process will begin with the FY25-26 budget. Like I said, we told the departments that that's what they've submitted to us. And we will have those recommendations to you in the coming weeks when the manager presents her recommended budget. The second recommendation is something that other communities have done as well, which is establish an advisory fire commission that can address additional recommendations and system priorities. So this would be an ongoing commission that would be tasked at looking at how we build the policies and procedures of our system. The goal of the commission would be to create structure for a system approach to fire service rather than individual district approaches. So as we've moved into the system operations, really kind of setting those rules, come up with a uniform pay plan through the system, and then also would be tasked with studying and recommending efficiencies within the system. Third recommendation is to develop a system-wide capital improvement plan. So hire a consultant to perform a facility, apparatus, and equipment assessment for the entire system. Implement a plan that provides predictability to the replacement and repairs of necessary capital throughout the system. So essentially what we've been looking at doing from a county perspective, we want to see what apparatus, what equipment our system has, when it needs to be replaced, and try to make a strategic plan on that from a system perspective, which would also be funded out of the overlay district. And the first year could be funded with overlay fund balance that we currently have. And the recommendations for the capital expenditure, we do know that there may be some needs prior to a CIP being developed, but we would rely on the fire commission once established to give us those recommendations of things we need to do immediately until that CIP can be approved and adopted. So these are some of the more, like I said, multi-year plans and some things that the Fire Commission would be working on. So develop those uniform policies and procedures throughout the system where possible, having a uniform system-wide pay plan, common definition of what a qualified firefighter is, revise the current contract that we have with them, with the fire departments to provide clear expectations and measures for both sides, and then explore funding formula for municipal or multi-county departments that provide some predictability and reliability on those. Those would be the recommendations. And once again, if the board were to establish a fire commission, we would really task that commission with providing some recommendations and doing a lot of this work. And what we've seen in other communities is really that has been a mixture of fire chiefs, board directors, commissioners, staff, and even some regular residents who are served by the fire system as well. So obviously a very complex system, and we've had several meetings, and I think we've gone in a lot of different directions because there was just a lot to uncover. But certainly was very thankful for the expertise of staff and the conversation between the commissioners, the fire chiefs, and we do have a lot of data that we have gone through and continue to go through that we didn't focus on in this presentation, but certainly can provide whatever data you would like to see as well going forward when we make our recommendations and at any time you'd like to see it. This time I'd be happy to answer any questions. I will say I told the fire chiefs they didn't have to say anything, but if you have a very specific question, I would certainly call on them to help me out here.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay, that's Gloria online. Go ahead.
Can I ask if the fire chiefs that are there, do they buy into these recommendations?
Yes, if the fire chiefs are here, do you agree with the recommendations? Did you buy into the recommendations? You can go, if you want to come up and.
Hey, you can all come. Chief B. Ross and you guys both, Gary, come on up. Y'all can be seen and heard about that.
Impromptu here.
Let's go step to the mic, and then that way Commissioner Wisdom can hear you from the microphone. That one, yes. Yes.
So anyway, yes, we've, as Manager Haney, Assistant Manager Haney mentioned, we've been meeting, and it has been kind of termed the Blue Ribbon Committee, and these are all the topics that have been brought up, and most of our issues around funding tend to, most times, capital and employees, staff. And we're seeing the response numbers on volunteers are just continually dropping. And I personally don't see any end in sight with that. And it's actually, we actually have trouble even finding employees, even to be able to pay people to go to calls and to respond and be firefighters. So yes, this is all part of our discussions and time to try to move our county forward and make our system better and equitable for everybody. So, Chief B. Roth, Chief Stires. Fine job.
So Chairman, if I may, I would just like to say to the chiefs that are here today that I know that change is hard, but it's inevitable. But to hear you today embrace the change, I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am, and there'll be some struggles. So there's one thing that is saying in the fire service is firemen hate the way it is, but they hate change too, so.
Well, before you all sit down, I want to thank, it's been a pleasure getting to know these three plus Chief Bottoms from Walkertown. Very professional, care deeply about this serving communities and keeping people safe, and recognize that, you know, we've done a pretty good job band-aiding for a long time to get to where we are, and maybe it's kind of, I think there is an acknowledgement that we need to, but I mean, this is just a high-level overview. Kyle did a great job with a high-level overview. I mean, I was just wondering, I hadn't seen this, and I was wondering how he was going to try to capture this, and I thought he did a really good job, because the expression of devil in the details is an understatement in this case, because I learned something at every meeting, and I just barely scratched the surface of what I think I know. But really, we have really quality professional people across our fire service and our county service at the back, that they're, you know, part of that work with us, that our fire marshal assistant and so forth. We have great people in EMS. It was a great committee, and we really learned a lot. And I just really want to thank you for all the things the time that you gave and your approach. I think that's Commissioner McDaniel's, but your approach to actually considering this and recognize we need to do something, and now we need to kind of get started. It's not don't fix it in 5 years, but you make progress every year. That's the whole key. But thank you so much.
So Chairman, I did have some questions for Kyle. So Kyle, I wanted to make sure that we're still connected with Forsyth Tech and their fire program, and is it helping with recruitment?
Certainly we are. I don't know if Deputy Chief Smith wants to talk a little bit about that.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and staff. Yes, we are still working with Forsyth Tech. They actually have a very good program, and actually our high schools, we have 4 high schools now that have a program. So when they graduate, they just about have everything except for one class, and as soon as they turn 18, they can get that class, and they're fully certified, which has been a benefit to probably a lot of the departments around here.
That's what I'd like to hear. Okay, thank you. And then my last question, Kyle, was relative to the association and the advisory commission. Are they working along with the fire association with regards to the policies and procedures?
Yeah, so and so the Chiefs Association meets regularly, and they have this conference. This is really kind of more of a board that the commissioners would create and select who goes on there to have a focused mission that you assign them each year. And that's how other communities have done it, and it has been made up of some chiefs, certainly a county commissioner, and then staff to really dive into it. It's a little bit of what we were doing with the study group, but it's a little bit formalized with more of a work plan.
For Forsyth County?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And that's all. I appreciate the report today.
Good. Other questions? You did a great job, and the problems to unravel there are lots of them. Like, let's say that. We've got a lot of things to work on, but it's been good. That was a great presentation. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is in regards to medical insurance update. We've not typically brought medical insurance discussions before the board in detail. However, due to its significant impact on the budget this year and what we're expecting next year, I have asked staff to provide an overview. We briefly mentioned this during the April budget workshop. Today's presentation outlines a short-term solution to address immediate pressures with the understanding that we'll continue working on longer-term strategies in the upcoming year. Our Human Resources Director, Shannon Hutchins, and our Chief Financial Officer, Terry Goodman, will lead today's discussion.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As a follow-up to our budget session earlier this month, Terry and I are going to discuss the county's health plan, eligibility, operating results, and staff's recommendations for plan redesign.
Before you start, you want to go ahead and click your slideshow thing so it can get bigger?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you had that. That's covering up. What do I need to do? Okay, thank you. Okay.
There you go.
So the health plan is offered to full-time employees and their dependents. Spouses are eligible if they are not offered health care through their employer. Retirees under age 65 with 20 years of service with Forsyth County and are eligible for health insurance. If they are not on Medicare, they can remain on the plan at the time of retirement. Retiree spouses and dependents who are on the plan at the time of retirement may remain on the health plan until they or the retiree becomes ineligible. We have a self-funded plan with shared premium and claims costs between the member and the county. 70 to 80% of the plan cost is funded by the county. To mitigate high claims risk, the county has a separate stop-loss contract for claims over $175,000. We transitioned from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina to Cigna in 2021. The plan, however, remained the same. There were no changes made to the plan layout, coverage levels, deductibles, or copays at that time.
Before you leave that slide, can I ask you one question on Medicare? Let's say somebody has retired. I'm looking at the Medicare Advantage, the ones that combine sort of some insurance part that we would provide that would combine with Medicare. So let's say you have an employee at 66, whatever it is they choose, 65, they choose to be on Medicare. Is there a combination? They're typically, I think that's kind of a industry name, Medicare Advantage plan.
Right, for active employees, is that what you're asking?
Or yes, and then if they retire and they've been over 20 years, so they can continue it.
No, we do not offer that.
But what about if you were working? If you continue to work and you went on Medicare, then can you have a combined plan with ours and Medicare?
Right. Then our plan becomes primary and Medicare becomes secondary.
It's interesting. I was just thinking the state health plan has a Medicare
Right.
Advantage plan, which is the name of the classification. And Medicare is kind of, I think, first, and it divides it. It doesn't talk about first and second. It kind of talks, Medicare controls the things, but then on the drug plan, that's basically what the state health plan is handling the
Right.
drug part, and they bid all that out
Mhm.
to do the drug stuff, the carriers and the pharmaceutical things that they will cover, and they have a consultant does all that work. But and that may be hard to do, but it seems to me because it ends up for the state health plan, it saves a good bit of money. It saves money because the Medicare, they say yes, no, hospitals paying, they're not paying attention to Cigna on that. They're just paying. So it's a very different kind of plan that overlaps. And it should be possible in a self-insured plan to do that.
Well, yeah, we can take that back and talk with our consultant about that.
As we're looking for things for the next year, that's certainly something we can look into.
Sorry.
In the last several years, the county has increased premiums on average of a share cost of 3%. There's been no change to deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums, or other plan-specific share costs since July of 2017. There's approximately 4,000 members on the county's health plan, and there's increased membership due to lower vacancies, and there's increased claims costs that's put pressure on the plan. Terry's going to talk a little bit about, in the next few slides there, about the operating.
So we account for the health plan within what is called an internal service fund. It is a separate group of accounts that allow us to keep track of, over the years, of all the premiums that are contributed from employees or employer, and then the expenses of the firm, or excuse me, of the fund for claims or the stop-loss premium that we pay or the wellness program that we offer. As I mentioned to you back in one of our previous workshops, through March 31st of this year, claims have been outpacing our budgeted estimates, and our current premium structure is not providing sufficient funding to cover those claims. As you can see here on the schematic, this is a projected look at what we expect the internal service health plan portion of the internal service fund to look like at June 30 of this year. You see it would run into a deficit of almost $5.3 million. We have proposed and have moved $4.5 million in additional employer contributions from the general fund to the internal service fund to restore a positive net position. The budget director has indicated that funding is available in the general fund to allow us to make that move.
Where's that $4.5 million coming from?
General fund.
It's part of some of the freezes and all of that we were doing. So that amount was part of the total, like 18 million that we said we were trying to shore up.
It was an amount in the original budget, adopted budget, that was not utilized. And so the funding was there to allow us to make the additional one-time contribution. In looking at the current plan and why current premium structure is not covering claims cost, we really just see that the tier structures that we have are just not really accurately reflecting the coverage cost. And Shannon will go into a little bit more detail on that. And also just looking at the claims experience, the way in which the claims estimates are comprised, the consultant is looking at a 3-year average, and I think what happened is coming out of COVID, when our staffing levels were low, and I think we even had a little bit lower claims experience because of COVID, that 3-year average really didn't give us an accurate prediction of what our claims experience would be once we got more fully staffed, and maybe some of that catch-up procedures from the COVID years caught up with us. So we are currently looking at the premium structure, because as we take that current structure and do an estimate of what fiscal 26 will look like with the claims experience that we expect and what revenue would be generated from our current structure, we're seeing a $7.8 million funding gap that we would need to close. In order to do that, we've looked at the plan design in ways in which the plan costs can be reduced for fiscal year 26. And Shannon will take you through some of those changes that are being proposed.
So as Terry mentioned, we have worked with the benefits consultant and county management to identify areas to reduce plan cost. This includes increasing the stop-loss limit, increasing co-pays, out-of-pocket limits, and adjusting premiums. And I will say it's on the other slide, sorry. In addition, Cigna is offering an increase in administrative credits and pharmacy rebates with the renewal. We are also proposing to change coverage tiers from 3 tiers to 5. To offer flexibility for employees and better reflect actual cost of coverage, we recommend a 5-tier structure which includes the added options of employee plus child, employee plus children, and employee plus spouse. Our current tier structure is employee only, employee plus 1, and family. The current stop-loss limit is $175,000. The cost to the county for this is $3.5 million. We recommend increasing the level to $300,000, reducing the county's cost to $1.47 million. The estimated savings will be $486,000, with a decrease in premium cost compared to anticipated claims. Additionally, with the renewal, as I stated previously, Cigna is including an annual $600,000 administrative fee credit for the renewal, and pharmacy rebates, which are applied to health plans for including medications on their formulary. Cigna issues these rebates quarterly. Rebates are projected to increase by $1.45 million in the upcoming fiscal year. So on this slide, you can see the current and the recommended changes to medical copays. Increasing the emergency room copay to $500, which is currently $250, saves approximately $245,000 in plan cost. All other medical copays would stay the same, and the copay is waived if the member is admitted to the hospital, and that's how it is today. A few slight increases to member prescription copays will save the plan an estimated $380,000. For retail prescriptions, this would increase generic and brand prescriptions by $5. Non-formulary brand name drugs would increase $15. And specialty drug copays would increase to $100, where it's currently $60.
Are those for 90-day supplies and medicine?
I think it varies, and I can get that information. We've looked at so much data lately, I can't tell you for sure if that's 60 or if it's 90. But I can send that to you. Increasing the individual out-of-pocket maximum to $5,000 and family out-of-pocket maximum to $10,000 is a planned savings of $942,000. In summary, the estimated savings to the plan with the proposed changes is $3,088,319. The changes reduce the expected funding gap from $7.8 million to $4.7 million. The remaining gap would be funded by increases to employee and employer premiums. Here you can see on this slide the current tier structure and the employee premium cost and the proposed premium cost. The proposed tiers give options to employees who are currently on the family tier, for instance, but they may only have children on their plan. In this case, monthly premiums would reduce for the employee. Premiums in all other tiers will increase a bit.
Then finally, we just wanted to give you a look at what the 26 budget would look like if we implement these changes. You can see the increase in employer-employee premiums going in, and then fully covering the expected claims and other costs of the plan.
Can you go back to that slide? You're just kind of going through, I'm not digesting this information very quickly.
While you're there, I'm sorry, but premium copays, deductibles are all familiar terms. What is a stop-loss limit, please?
The current stop-loss limit?
No, what is a stop-loss limit?
Oh, right. So for high-cost claims, so claims that come through that are $175,000 or more, our stop-loss policy will kick in and pay that or reimburse us for that claim.
Right.
Over $175,000.
All right? So, and this is shown as a liability here. So we're paying extra when we have a case that exceeds a certain amount. Is that correct? We, as the plan holder, automatically pay extra. This is not something that is passed through to the beneficiary, the employee or the retiree. It's something
We pay.
extra that the county is paying. Okay, thank you.
But this is like, as I understand it, it's like expanding, you're reducing your liability by moving that threshold from 175 to 300, which means you're not getting, it's kind of like you got insurance now, it wouldn't have, anything would kick in to help you on these more expensive claims until you got to 300,000, where it has been 175. So you can see the premium change, if you will, goes from 1.7 million to 1.47. The premium change is dropping.
But when,
Cover
just,
that.
yeah, and just so you know, I mean, we looked at the data to see like how many claims actually went over 175 versus then how many went over 300,000. And so we've actually been paying way more premiums than what we've actually really been using. And so while this is, I mean, it's almost like it's an insurance, right? I mean, it's a little risky, but there's enough, we feel like there's enough buffer in there to where we can increase it because we haven't really been we've been paying way more premiums than we've even realized on the 175, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, now we're good.
So for next steps, we will rebid the county's health insurance for fiscal year '27. The current renewal with Cigna is for 1 year only, and that's due to timing constraints. We will continue partnering with with our benefits consultant to evaluate the most cost-effective and competitive plan options. As part of the future rebid, we do aim to revisit the potential plan design enhancements, which would include the addition of a high-low plan option to provide employees with more choice. And we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, it's a lot to digest. Just taking your figure that the county pays 70 to 80%, that's a big range. But if apply it to your 3.7 million shortfall, if you use 70%, we'd be paying about 2.6 million more than we were paying.
The shortfall was 7.8, and then with these changes, we got it down to 4.7. And so the county will be picking up about 4 million of that. And
Go back to that slide. I wrote down, where did I get a 3.7 from? Just go back. I mean, I was picking out what I thought one number to kind of get our share of that. It's further back. Whoa, forward.
Right here? This is the out-of-pocket max?
No. It's where it has the totals. It's bigger totals. Go to another slide. Whoa. Oh, you're going the wrong direction. Oh, let me see. No, one more, I think. Go try one more. Nope.
It's Terry's finance slide, the internal service fund slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back. This one?
Yes. So, okay. So you're looking at our cost being 4.7 times the points. And so are we paying 70% of that roughly, or what?
I think right now with this premium structure, it would come out to about 4.1 million of that 4.7.
Say that again?
4.1 of the 4.7 would be covered by the employer, and the remainder is being picked up by the employees, including changes to the out-of-pocket maximums and copay.
I think what
It's
you're
paying
talking
good.
about.
It's paying more, like probably 85%.
It's about 85%. I think Shannon's talking about historically where the ranges have been.
Is the 70 to 80% of plan and claims costs. So if you look at our plan, we have some co-insurances and things like that. The county pays 70 to 80% of those claims and the premiums.
And again, I think for us, this is, short-term measures because it is a pretty significant increase, and employee premiums are still going to increase pretty significantly from in the past. And so we're trying to mitigate the county's cost as well as the employees' cost, understanding that we hopefully can figure out some better options the next year.
The thing you don't know is what employee choices will be with 5 tiers versus 3.
So we did an analysis of employees and what dependents they have. So we know how many employees have, right now it's employee plus one in family, but we know if employees have on the plan 1 child, 2 children, no spouse. So we've done, the consultant has done an analysis of where we think people will actually land in those tiers based on who's covered today. Now, of course, we'll do open enrollment where we'll get more accurate numbers, but we think we're pretty close in terms of slotting of where it is today, just from a cost estimate standpoint. But again, we'll certainly shore it up with open enrollment, and it'll be more accurate after that time.
Yeah, so for me, the recommended changes give me serious heartburn, and I understand that we're having to learn how to live with less now because of our particular climate right now. It was good to know that we are reviewing Cigna so that we can have some other options out there. As far as staff is concerned, are we going to be doing a staff survey with regards to the benefit changes? Kind of bothers me for them to know that these changes are going to come, especially for the pharmacy, the prescription drugs. So that's bothersome with the amounts that I'm witnessing. And then my last question is that does staff know that the health center here for the county, it's not really a health center, but the health clinic is here to help them with maybe not going to the emergency room?
So we do run campaigns, emails. We do that every so often. It's time to do another one. But new hire orientation, we always include information about that in their packets, and then we do a campaign a couple times per year.
Do you know the availability? Do they still have room? Are they sitting there twiddling thumbs, or do they have capacity for?
They do have capacity, and we have added some occupational health stuff there as well, but there is capacity.
Yeah, I think that might be just helpful for me, knowing my heart, with the changes that we're recommending. All right, thank you.
So on our end, just so you know, one of the main reasons we're bringing it forth is because these budgetary impacts will be incorporated in my manager's recommended budget, and we have to start open enrollment really soon. So when you do plan design changes, we have to give employees notice, and we certainly did not want to do that without informing the board first. And so that's really kind of our next steps, is to start our open enrollment process. Again, I do want to be clear, I don't feel great about any of this, but I also think that it is a sound recommendation just based on where we are today. I think it is a reasonable short-term solution that minimizes the impact to employees and also reduces the impact on the county given our tough budgetary year that we're having. And then again, during this next year, we'll be working really hard on trying to provide some other solutions and rebidding, and hopefully we can come up with something better.
I might just add one other comment. I don't think any of us are comfortable with needing to make these kinds of recommendations, but when we get the forecast of this is what your claims cost is going to be, got to, have to find a way to cover it. I do think, as we dive deeper into this in the coming year, it would be worth it to work with the consultant and find out what's driving those claims. And is there more that we can do on the preventative side or on the wellness side, or in some ways to maybe head off some of those claims as a way of bringing down the total cost and not just shifting the cost.
Terry, what is the Cigna's renewal annual fee anyways?
What is that?
I know that they gave us a credit for $600,000, but what is their normal fee for that, if you know?
I can get you the exact, but it's a per member, per
Yeah.
month
I mean-
fee, and it depends on how many members are on the plan.
You can see the administrative fees line there, 831,000.
Okay.
And that, and Shannon's saying that's really calculated like a certain amount per member, per claim that they process for us.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chantel, we're doing this because Cigna is going up on all their prices. Is that correct? It really doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in Washington. It's Cigna that's going up. Is that not correct?
It's a combination of things, Ms. Wisenhunt. Honestly, we had gotten some incorrect numbers from our consultant for the last few years that has significantly impacted our internal service fund. And then our claims are also increasing. And we also had not been budgeting recommendations appropriately. So it is a combination of factors. It's not necessarily it's not all on the way in which Cigna is operating. Terry, I don't know if you want to answer that differently.
No, I think that's accurate. Really, our biggest cost is the claims, and we pay those directly. So Cigna doesn't really control how much a hospital or a doctor or pharmaceuticals cost us.
Right. And when claims increase, we have to pay those claims.
I guess the context on this is we're looking at what you're apparently recommending is that we spend an additional $4.1 million for next year, and that's on top of $4.5 million in cash that we actually have put into the plan this year. So we're looking at $8.6 million additional county cost for health insurance. That strikes me as hard to imagine, quite frankly.
It wasn't budgeted appropriately this year. So we have depleted, for FY25, we have depleted our internal service fund. So this $4.5 million is so that we can cover the cost of claims that's happening today through June 30th.
Yeah, and when that $4.5 million is added into the 25, column, the county's contribution for next year is relatively flat.
So, say that again?
Well, the 26.7 million that's there, that does not include the $4.5 million that we want to put in there to shore up that plan. So once that is put in there, and really what that's doing is saying, if our premium structure had been correct in 25, we would have had that additional revenue already in there. With the correct premium structure for 26, we're going to provide about the same amount of employer contributions into the plan.
Yeah, but our employer contributions are going up $4.1 million to make that happen.
Compared
say
to
employee
what was
versus employer.
originally planned to go in there for this year, yes. Not what was budgeted in the general fund, but what was originally planned to be contributed into the internal service fund.
I need to digest it. You're going to want action on this $4.1 million? When is this issue when is your signing up folks starting?
So it's my understanding that we're supposed to start informing employees at least about plan design May 1st is what I thought I heard from our benefits consultant. So, but in terms of shoring up for FY25, not 26, but for FY25, Terry's going to bring an action item to move the funds from the general fund to internal service fund. So that's separate. That's addressing our current budgetary issue. For FY26, again, it technically doesn't require board action. You all have never acted on these things in the past, but again, I do think that it is something that is worth doing that.
We haven't had increases in the budget either. as I recall.
You have each year, but it's,
But it
but it
shows
has,
up- it
but it
wouldn't-
has not,
Yeah,
we've just put
you're
it in the budget. We've put it in the budget. It's not been at this level of an increase, but we absolutely have increased it every year without board action. You've just approved it in the budget. Again, because this is a pretty sizable increase, I did not want to just do that without you knowing about it, understanding it. But we certainly can, take action on Thursday. We can create a resolution or just incorporate it in the budget. It's really whatever the board's pleasure is, but we do need to start doing some communications to employees. Open enrollment is going to be starting in May.
No, I sincerely appreciate the information because I want to know. That's a significant amount for her to have to resolve in our budget, and it's our responsibility to at least know. So thank you.
And it's,
You're asking for, go ahead, Gray.
well, I'm fairly lost here in how this occurred, not on my watch, but what I wanted to say was, so there are no other options to investigate in terms of a MEWA, an HBT, an HSA, none of that applies to this situation, is that correct?
I think those are things that we are still researching. We're still gathering information on that for the bid next year,
Oh,
fiscal year
good.
27.
Yes.
We just don't, quite honestly, we just do not have time this year. I mean, a lot of this stuff has really sprung up on us, but it is very clear that we need to be considering a lot of other options for next year.
I'll offer one other thing, that we did when we saw this sudden sharp rise in claims is we took the claims data and the best that we could, we sought to identify all the claims that we were being asked to fund and associate those with a member to make sure that they really were Forsyth County, North Carolina employee claims, just trying to find any way that we could to explain this increase. So I feel like we've done about all that we can to validate the data that's in front of us and to know that this is what we're looking at in terms of claims cost.
Thank you, Terry.
So what are you proposing for Thursday? Something for this Thursday?
So again, we can do one of two things. We can create a resolution for you all to approve the plan design and premiums, or we do nothing and I just put it in the budget. So I've asked the attorney about it. Again, you can act on it if you choose, or we can do as we've done in previous years. It's really the pleasure of the board.
Board have a pleasure on that, one way or the other?
Gordon?
Well, I was just going to say, I can't really add too much to what the manager's already said, but I believe what she's looking for is consensus among you to go forward with this, and this will be in the budget. It would be part of the budget for next year, but if any of you were not to want to do this, then she would need to know immediately, because as she said, this really needs to go out in a week or two.
I'm okay with it, but I think the resolution may be helpful just to safeguard.
Yeah, say it again. Sorry, Commissioner Renee.
I was just saying that I think that resolution is necessary to safeguard our manager.
So you'd rather have the resolution instead of just putting it in the budget? I'm fine with that.
We will create a resolution. Thank you.
And if I may, just to be absolutely certain that I understand correctly what you're doing for this fiscal year, you are projecting how much we will incur in costs for fiscal year 2025, and simply telling us that that is coming out of the fund, and the internal service fund will be down at that point to X dollars. Now, you're just reporting reality to us. There's no action for us to take.
Well, Terry is going to come back in an upcoming meeting in May to get your formal approval to move the funds from the general fund to internal service fund for this fiscal year, because we have to shore up the internal service fund to pay claims.
Right. Now, is that going to reflect on our fund balance overall? that going to take it even lower?
It will affect fund balance, but it has already been included in the estimates that we've been giving you.
That's the question. So it's not going to take it any further down. It's already, your estimates have been showing it. It's that far down. Thank you.
Right.
All right.
Okay, we'll bring it back on Thursday.
All righty. Anything else?
Thank you.
We stand adjourned.